passe super l'artiste, super, encore un but sensationnel. That's a brilliant bit of follow-up play by Mahe. Oh my goodness me, what a shot.
Sagosen setter det hen! Han setter den! De i semifinale igjen!
Hello, and welcome to Uniformed Handball Hour. This is Brian Campion speaking to you, and yet another episode coming to you from all over Europe, from Vienna, Copenhagen, and Gothenburg. How are you, boys?
How are you, Brian?
Doing well.
How's the patient, Alex? It was a big topic in the last podcast. I mean, the fact that we delayed it for a whole day, and then you still couldn't make it.
I'm still alive, holding it together. It's been tough. It has been really tough, but I think I'll make it through.
What was the diagnosis in the end?
Fat finger was the diagnosis. So I'm just out of my splint, but nothing broken, just a fat finger.
So you haven't played since then?
I actually did play a game on the weekend, which I taped it up nice and well, and it felt really good during the game. Maybe my catching wasn't at the level it should have been or it could have been. And then the next day, my finger was twice the size. So I might lay low for a little while.
Okay. The season's coming to an end for us non-professionals in Scandinavia anyway. So you did contribute a little bit, besides the hilarious story, to the podcast, also with your vote for the Player of the Year 2021. I think we'll start there before we go into the Champions League and European League action, which is flying in now, because all the results have come flying in. You went for Nora Merck, which I'm glad you went for, because Merck ended up second place overall in our voting for the Women's Player of the Year.
Yeah, I thought basically my reasoning for Henny Reistad was quite similar to my reasoning, or against Henny Reistad was similar to my reasoning against Matthias Giesel, where it was kind of Henny Reistad's peaks were absolutely incredible, but then she's not the starting line back player for Norway. So can you give a substitute a World Player of the Year award? So we ended up with Henny Reistad anyway, which I'm okay with, but I thought Nora Merck had the consistency. She had a bit more consistency throughout the season, in the Champions League, in the championships. She was pretty much top scorer across the board. That is in large part due to penalties, but still, I'm not disappointed with Henny Reistad, who is the most exciting player in handball at the moment.
I'd say you can probably categorize Nora Mork in that category of player that almost suffers from her own level, the own level she plays at, that when she shows up in these lists, people are always thinking, oh yeah, of course. But she's just one of those players who's consistently at such a high level that you almost take it for granted. And I think we're probably going to talk about that a little bit when we get into the IHF's announcement. Was it yesterday? Yeah, today, that when they named their all Danish IHF Player and Coaches of the Year. So Denmark sweeping through the awards. I'm sure, Alex, it's national news there. It's all over the radio and TV.
It was actually.
Oh, I was joking.
I had a colleague who messaged me this morning being like, okay, this is rigged, right? So this can't be right. But they did get the clean sweep in the IHF awards, which are, I think that confirms that they're fully fan vote, right? We weren't sure if it was a mix of a panel and fan vote or whatever, but seeing the results, I can only conclude that it is a fan vote. And I think this poll was shared on the national media in Denmark a couple of weeks ago or a couple of days ago, over the last while, shared on, I think, TV2, one of the big kind of websites for news in the country. So it's quite easy for a lot of Danish fans to go in, click, ooh, Sandra Toft, definitely Women's Player of the Year. Ooh, Nikolai Jakobsen, he's a great dude. He loves a bit of pork. I love a bit of pork. He's going in as my national player. and the last coach.
Jesper Jensen.
Jesper Jensen, of course, is probably the only name I know on the list, so I'll give him a vote. Pretty much made a mockery of the awards, I believe.
Thank you for taking us into the psyche of the average Dane there. That was that was extraordinary. What I find funny as well is the Handball Planet Player of the Year was Mikkel Hansen. So you've Mikkel Hansen, Matthias Giesel from our side, and the official one, Niklas Landin. So 3 different Danes, all the World Handball Player of the Year. At the end of it all, I'm pretty happy with our choice.
Yeah, so there's this kind of weird thing that happens with the Handball Planet Awards because they go position by position. So they don't actually vote for the best player, I believe, at least in the fan vote, which makes up a large portion of it. But they go position by position. And then the person who gets more votes, the most votes on that position, becomes the Player of the Year. So in essence, Matthias Giesel had much tougher competition at right back with Tika Mem or Alex Dushabayev in there compared to the left back position where Mikkel Hansen, I think Sagerson was second, and Sagerson had a good year, but not to the extent of competing with Mikkel Hansen. But I think Mikkel Hansen, I don't think it's a wild choice that he is the Player of the Year for 21. If you disregard club handball completely, then yeah, of course he is.
Well, we had all these discussions in the actual votes. So
are we saying now that it's conclusive after this that you cannot have a fan-only vote for these type of awards?
Well, we did, and we got the results we wanted. At least our listeners were influenced enough by us to agree.
I think, let's say, the fan vote can contribute to a panel vote. So, in essence, what happened with our version of the Women's Player of the Year for 2021 was there was pretty much 3 votes for Henny Reistad and then 2 votes for Grassadi if you include both of the playmaker contributors. So, in essence, that was a bit of a tiebreaker to cut. So I think in that way it works. That's the same way that Handball Planet do it as well. They do have the experts to come in and throw in their votes as well.
Well, congratulations to Henny Reistad and Matthias Giesel, the official, unofficial, uninformed handball hour players of 2021, supporting the youth over here in the podcast. So on to the action. Shall we start with what we saw over the weekend and the first legs of the Women's Champions League last 16 or the playoffs? And good old FTC, lads. Just when it looks like everything is falling into place for them, Krim get to sign Anna Gross out of nowhere.
That alone is even the most FTC thing to possible to happen to someone. Just as you think, we're the slight favourites in this tie now. Surely nothing can go wrong. It's almost like Mr. Bean, and then they sign the best player on the planet, who all of a sudden has the best game of the season also when you play against them. It's absolutely sickening. I mean, FTC also, they did obviously get a player as well. They got Patrice Edvige as a defensive specialist. But of course, the impact that Anna Gross can have, then getting a defensive specialist, you can't really compare those two. But it must be absolutely sickening to be an FTC fan at the moment, because 33-26, not looking good. Really not looking good at the moment.
No, and you can consider that Krim scraped through to the playoffs. Like they were the last team to qualify, and now looking like a real contender now that they have Anna Gross. What are your thoughts in general on this? It's a very unusual situation related to the war in Ukraine, that players from the Russian clubs could transfer if and in this case be able to play for their new club, which wouldn't be the case usually. There were some things I saw on our social media, I think, one or two people saying that it felt a bit unfair, but is it something even worth discussing in this scenario, which is unlikely, hopefully is never going to happen again.
It's almost like one of those things where I feel like I almost agree with both sides. I'm like, yeah, it's unfair for the teams who didn't get Grassady walking into your team. But at the same time, for the players themselves, for their season to be cut short because of a war that they have no kind of control over, they also have a right kind of to play and finish and have a go at picking up a medal or making it to the Final Four. So I think it's one of those things where I almost can see the arguments for both sides. But to just bench players like Anna Gross, Beatrice, Edvige or Grassady for the whole season and not see them perhaps playing at Final Fours, I think you need them there. So congratulations to Crim, who've gone from complete outsider to be looking like one of the favourites for the final now. It's really coming together for them because they were improving also as the season went on. So this boost of a player like that coming back is just absolutely won the lottery.
I think it's probably a bit much to allow the players to play in the Champions League in the competition that they have already played for a previous club. You can still allow players to move to clubs that aren't participating in the Champions League, as example. So let's say they play in the European League and let them play that. Or they can move to a Champions League club, but only play in a different league, for example. Yeah. I think that is a more fair solution. I think overall, to be honest, I think it's been handled in a weird way, the whole competition, with the fact that both of the Russian teams were kicked out, but then weren't replaced by a team. They were basically who was it? It was CSM Bucharest, who just got a bye. It seems like a bit of a weird handling, and it's, as you said, it kind of throws around a lot of power in the competition and might change it completely, where, you could just, I think you could have handled it a bit smoother, but here we are. At least it's an exciting competition, and looking forward to what can happen.
Yeah, and Metz picking up Grassady, you mentioned there as well, Brian, and they're looking good based on this whole scenario as well, to go straight to the Final Four, as they beat Borussia Dortmund by 8 in the first leg, 30-22. And because they're not going to face Rostov-Don, if they manage to hold out in the second leg, they go straight through to the Final Four. So, yeah, it's all a bit odd.
You have to be gutted if you're Dortmund, for example.
Oh, yeah.
I think, you have a bit of a chance. Yeah. First, you have a chance to go through to the Final Four with one game. So that's a bit of a, that's something good for you. And then your opposing team gets potentially the best player in the world in Grassady, and you're done. So it just seems like an absolute mess to you. Yeah,
and on top of all of that, you had Erling Haaland giving you a shout out for people to buy tickets and come see the game, and you still couldn't fill up the hall. I was just like, double whammy.
Well, I thought the atmosphere is pretty good for that game.
Although the atmosphere is pretty good, but there's a lot of empty seats still, and I was just like, They got one of the biggest stars of football to give a shout out to get tickets and everything, and then you really thought everything was coming together nicely. We've seen them in the past pull off big results, but just way off the pace then in that game.
Yeah, it was pity.
Probably the only really good game, obviously, was the Odense-Brest game. I don't know what you saw that, but yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a good game of handball by any means, but it was basically penalties every 30 seconds. I lost count. I was doing the live blog for it, and every time I went on to look at it, there was another penalty. And it was coming up on screen. There was something like Brest had 7 penalties in the first 20 minutes. And it was just absolutely bonkers. The ball was, give the ball to Fopa, she'll turn, someone will be standing inside, and that seemed to all they seem to be doing for the majority of the game. So I don't see them as final contenders or title contenders by any means, but it's probably going to be match of the week for the next round, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that has been confirmed. Yeah,
it has. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The prize for the winners of that, Jur. So it must be pretty. It must be pretty sickened. Like when you look at you look at Metz and Dortmund. The winner goes straight through to the Final Four, and then probably the tightest of the last 16 games. The winner of that gets Jur in the quarterfinals. It's tough.
Yeah. So congratulations on your last game of the season. Yeah. But look, who knows? If I'd fancy. I mean, Brest versus Győr. It could be a bit of a scrap. And who knows there? And maybe Sandra Toft. Maybe Sandra Toft, on the back of her winning the World Handball Player of the Year, just has an absolute Stormer against her upcoming transfer club.
In that Odense Brest game, we also get a huge matchup of Althea Reinhardt versus Sandra Toft, both of which had a pretty mediocre game in the first one, but that's a bit exciting to have those two on opposing teams for once.
Yeah, because I opened up the live blog as well. I said, today is going to be the showdown of the keepers. We have Sandra Toft on one side and absolute the quietest games ever. And I was like, oh, God, that looks... I thought there was a shoe-in for a good performance from one of them at least, anyway.
But in the first half, Althea Reinhardt got smacked in the face by Niakate and then came off. So, yeah, I think she, I know. And ironically, Alicia Toublanc, who did it at the World Championship, was on that Brest team. She didn't do it though this time. Her teammate did. Yeah, it's not. Yeah. Oh, it's not funny. That's the one to look out for definitely this upcoming weekend in terms of the playoff games. And we have the men coming up this midweek as well. Brian and I are going up to sunny Elverum for Elverum against PSG.
Yeah, I didn't look up the temperature. What is the temperature in Elverum at the moment? Because I'm quite enjoying the summer vibes down here in Vienna. Am I in for a big shock now when I head north?
Well, all I know is that a friend of mine is planning on going up to that part of the country next week for some skiing in their winter cabin. So pack the jackets, pack the thermals, Brian.
Oh God! Okay, it's a change of mindset. But I think it's going to. Yeah, it's PSG's. It's Elverum's first time to play a playoff game at home because obviously last season they played 2 away games, wasn't it, in Barca? So it's going to be a big occasion for them. I mean, look, who knows? I think it's going to be a close game. I do feel like that. I think Elverum at home like that, and we know PSG can be very up and down, and obviously PSG won't have Mikkel Hansen either. So I expect a pretty decent performance in that home leg at least. Anyway, I'm not sure about in Paris then, but for this first one, I think Elverum have at least good 60 minutes in them anyway.
Yeah, you'd hope so, and it'll be a nice game with Tobias Grundl and Luke Steins running the shows in the centre of attack. Hopefully, it's a good high paced game as well. I think that's why it was set. It's guaranteed good atmosphere, completely packed that whole Elverum will, they said it themselves immediately. It's like, this is the biggest game in our 76-year history. This is a real chance for them to show what they're made of. They know they're not going to qualify for the quarterfinals, but they can at least make a good attempt at it in the first leg.
And of course, PSG will be missing Mikkel Hansen, which is some tragic news that came out over the last week, that a blood clot was found in his lungs, which potentially originated from his knee surgery earlier in the year. So quite tragic for Mikkel Hansen to end his career with PSG, a whole 10 years to end it sidelined, which is a real pity. But hopefully everything is okay with him going forward. It seems like he might be out for 5-6 months. And I don't know, in other sports, it's been a real mixed bag when we talk about blood clots. Some players do come back, some never get back on the court. So we really have to just hope that he does come back and comes to Aalborg and kind of brings them to the next level as they expected. But a real pity for PSG. But in general, I don't think he is that much of a loss for PSG's chances in the Champions League with the way that he has been set up for them and the way that, they use him. I don't think it changes dramatically their approach. Of course, a lot depends on Brandy, who's coming back from his tragic injury as well. So, pretty dramatic stuff for PSG these days.
Yeah. I had to fact check you there a little bit, Alex. I was like, 10 years, that can't be right. I looked it up. It's like, he's 10 years at PSG. Where did that time go?
He was the OG PSG player. The new PSG. Once the money from AG Copenhagen disappeared, he followed the money into Paris.
And was a smart businessman.
and now he's going to Aalborg. Yeah. So hopefully, and if he does come, if we assume everything will be okay and he's fully fit, what a time in your career also to take 6, 7, 8 months off and then join a new club and hopefully be fully fit for them. So we could see a revolutionized Mikkel Hansen for Aalborg. But no point in speculating there. Elsewhere in the playoffs, we have Flensburg, Szeged, Porto, Montpellier, and Vardar versus Veszprém. Which of those games jump out to you as exciting ones?
Oh, it has to be Vardar Veszprém with David de Vries going back to his old club. I think that story there is the juiciest of all. And I expect a bit of a scrap and a bit of a battle there. That's just an interesting one for me because I think if David de Vries does a job over Veszprém, that would be incredible. But the hardest one to call, I think, for me has to be SG Szeged. I think it's very difficult to know where exactly SG are at the moment because they've been so up and down. So that for me is a bit of an unknown quantity as it stands right now. Yeah,
I think in terms of Veszprém, I think they should be strong enough to take care of Vardar. I don't know, we've seen a bit of invigoration in this Vardar team, but when you're comparing squads, there's really nothing to say that Vardar can stand a chance. But I don't know, Veszprém are just really weird. They look fantastic one week and they just look terrible the next. So who knows? Who knows?
With the first leg in Skopje, you hope that a bit like Elver and PSG, they'll give it a good fight and then Veszprém should get the job done after that. But then there's, I think, really two tight games. I mean, you said they're Flensburg, Szeged, Brian. Szeged should be slight favourites, but Szeged always seem to really, I don't know, it's a kind of mental block when they face German teams in the knockout rounds. I seem to recall them always losing to Kiel, and here we have Flensburg, who, themselves have just been, it's a game of a couple of really weird teams. I'd have to put Szeged slight favourites there, but you can't write off.
Yeah, I don't know. After putting all my chips in on Hungary at the Euro and that falling all apart, I somehow feel sort of similar about Szeged now as well. I'm there's a few characters in there as well who are central stage for the Hungarian team, and I'm not really so sure anymore. And it wouldn't be that crazy if Jim Godfreyson steps up and then has an incredible game as well. So that's a very hard one to call. As for Porto Montpellier, you'd imagine Montpellier should do the job, but we've sung the praise of Porto many times this podcast, but then also kind of doubted them at the wrong moments. So
they've pulled off some good results, haven't they? Good away results as well, drawing in Veszprém. Montpellier are a team that aren't indestructible at home. So even if it's a really tight first leg, you see that one as almost being a really dodgy 23-23 first leg game. And but there's no guarantee that Montpellier will take control in the second. Yeah,
but Montpellier are not good this year. They've really not been good at all. But it's a really tough one to call. Porto might not be in the Champions League next year. They lost to Sporting in the Portuguese league. So this might be a huge game for them. But one of those teams is going to come out and face Kielce and get destroyed. So so have fun.
Thanks for a nice season, boys.
That's a lot of confidence in Kielce.
It's really interesting because it really came down to that last game where Kielce, PSG, and Barcelona finished, and kind of what bracket they ended up with. And we're talking about PSG having to play Elverum and then Kiel. Potentially for a Final Four spot, while Kielce got through and then play Porto or Montpellier much easier.
Right, let's talk about the big one though. We said we'd do it under 30 minutes, so we'll have 3 minutes to talk about this. The European League, tomorrow night as we're recording it. Fuchs Berlin against Nantes in the last 16.
Yeah, that's too good for the last 16, let's be honest, isn't it? That's like a Final Four pairing. It's almost a shame, isn't it? I feel like at this early in the season.
That's a Champions League quarterfinal.
It is. It is. It is. I think the European League diehards would want Nantes to win because they don't want to see too many German teams in there. But I think no matter what, it's the winner of this is probably going to face Magdeburg, right? So it's just it's it's the gauntlet just to even get to the EHF finals.
You can see now obviously a massive step up then from the EHF Cup when you've seen pairings like this so early on. But it's very, that non-Fuchsburg United, almost, I don't know how that's going to be such two really, really close games, I'd imagine anyway. Very, very difficult to call. But then facing Magdeburg afterwards, and even Magdeburg Sporting is a really good game too.
Yeah.
There's so many good head-to-heads there. I mean, Płock playing Lemgo is also not to be sniffed at.
Płock they've really impressed me. And I said this coming out of the European Championship, because it seems to be a lot of Płock players that really showed up. You know, Tildusin, our favourite up and coming young player, he's been fantastic. Like Kosaratov, an absolute star for them. So I've been really impressed with Płock, and I think they have a nice little run to the Final Four there as well, playing Lemgo and then either Sevehof or Cadet Schaffhausen.
Yeah. And GOG have a decent run in as well, right? Bidaso Irun in the last 16 after their kind of heartbreaking exit last year, and also the fact that a lot of players are leaving at the end of this season. I feel like it's kind of a last hurrah for them to get some titles in, really, because they just lost the Danish Cup final yesterday. Still have the Danish League to fight over and the European League. It would be a real pity if that team doesn't get something big this season.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible that they can lose a player like Matthias Giesel and they're still top of the Danish League. They lost by 3 to Aalborg in the Danish Cup final, and they still won their remaining games in the group stage here. It's just a testament to the amount of young talent they have, like Emil Madsen, who has been another revelation. They just keep coming. So wouldn't count them out, but it's going to be much tougher for them without Giesel.
Anything else to throw in there before we wrap up?
I think we should check in with the Bundesliga a little bit, where there was a huge game between Kiel and Magdeburg last weekend, and Magdeburg finally lost the game after an incredible run, both in the league and everywhere. They've just been absolutely dominating everyone. They lost by 30-25 to Kiel, who were actually, that was a game fighting for their life, because a week before that, they had lost to Füchse Berlin. Right now, as it stands, we have Magdeburg on top with 44 points, Kiel with 40, and Füchse Berlin on 39 points. But Füchse Berlin have a game in hand on Kiel. So if Kiel had lost that game to Magdeburg, they would have been a point behind Füchse and a game in hand for Berlin. So huge game for them, but they stepped up. They did the business, and now they're breathing down Magdeburg's neck. So the Bundesliga is pretty exciting at the moment. We just don't talk about it too much.
So you said that Yika's job is safe then for another year.
Thankfully, he won that game. Otherwise, I would have had a pitchfork out.
There'd have been some more tweets.
Imagine if the Kiel don't qualify for the Champions League. That's
it could still happen, yeah. I mean, Berlin are still a point behind only and a game in hand.
And Füchse Berlin are powered by a 41-year-old Igor Vori.
God. Talk about wild transfers. I mean, surely, lads, you could find a good defensive specialist somewhere. I mean, Beatrice Edvige was available. I don't know.
When was the last time he played? It was a good few years.
2018 for Zagreb.
Almost 4 years ago.
That's crazy.
He's been a coach. He's been a coach for Zagreb. Like, what? I don't know.
Dig him out. This is definitely Stefan Kretschmar just calling his old mate.
I mean, I have a feeling Stefan Kretschmar could do a job in defense just as well as Igor Vori at this stage. That was wild.
Igor Vori's played 2 games and 2 minutes so far, so let's see how it goes. No goals.
Well, yeah. Well, on that note, we'll wrap it up for this quick one. We'll be back with another one very shortly as we catch up on the results we've seen, or results we see over the next few days. Alex, thank you very much. Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time, folks. All right, cheerio, bye-bye.